What's up, everybody? Thanks so much for tuning in today. Football is officially back. For real. Not any of this preseason stuff. Week one is upon us. And you know what that means? It means prediction season is upon us. Now, before I get into my picks for week one, hit like, hit subscribe. If you know anybody that's a football fan, send them over here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your picks. Whether you agree with me, disagree, doesn't matter. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into my week one predictions. Now, admittedly, week one is a bit of a crapshoot, and it's always sort of the worst week for predictions. And this is also the one week that I wouldn't want to put money on any games. But let's jump in anyways. We'll do our best. So, week one, game one, kicking off the season. The Detroit Lions go to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. This game just got a lot more interesting in the last couple days. We already knew Chris Jones was, well, before it was likely not going to play. Now it's pretty much impossible. Even if he signed now, that means he's showing up his first day, walking in on game day. Chris Jones is going to miss this game. We knew that. But the wrinkle we didn't all expect was Travis Kelce hyperextending his knee 2 days before the game. Whether he plays or not is in question. My guess is he won't play. I think if I'm the Chiefs, I understand that this is week one. Travis Kelce is important down the line. And I think that he's a 34-year-old tight end as well. You don't want to risk any real damage to his knee over a week one game. Even if that means you lose week one, fine. You lose week one. Nobody's thinking Kansas City's going to be missing the playoffs, but I would suspect Travis Kelce is not going to be playing in this game. Even with that said, I'm going to ride with the Kansas City Chiefs on this one for one simple reason. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, when they had time to prepare, be this bye weeks or the start of the year, they come out like a bat out of hell. They come out hair on fire, and it's really tough to beat them. This may be their biggest challenge. Not necessarily their toughest opponent or anything like that. It could be. The Lions could be good. But just for what's happening with their team right now and their roster, they're missing two of their three best players. It could get interesting, but until I see it happen, I'm going to pick Kansas City in week one. And the other thing about this game is this. I think the Lions are a good team. I think they're going to be winning their division this year. But I do think there's a chance that this might be like the lights are a little bit too bright to start the year. I think Kansas City might just be a step beyond where they're ready to start the year at. So I'm going to go Kansas City, even though I could very well look like an idiot in short order. On to the Sunday slate. The Carolina Panthers are going to the Atlanta Falcons. I am going to take Atlanta. I think Carolina could be a very good team and is live to win that division. But it is Bryce Young's first game as a pro. We don't actually know what we're going to get. Even in preseason, the Panthers' offense did not look awesome. And I understand, don't take too much away from the preseason, but it only gets harder when the regular season starts. So until I see something from the Panthers' offense and get a little bit of a better gauge of them, I'm probably going to go with the other team. I mean, depending on who they play. They could run into the Cardinals or something, and it's like, okay, well, Carolina can win that game. But Atlanta, it's a division team. They know the Panthers. They're a talented team at the very least. This comes down to Desmond Ridder. And I think that in an early game, who knows about the status of Brian Burns going through his own contract dispute. I think that just the way timing works out, I think Atlanta wins this one. Up next, the Cincinnati Bengals go to the Cleveland Browns. This is another interesting one. We are all assuming Joe Burrow is going to play this game. Now, his calf strain could be healed. It could not be healed. But the other thing that I think has gone overlooked with Joe Burrow and the Bengals is he still has not been extended. his contract situation is still unresolved, and it's been speculated from both sides here whether or not he will step on a football field without a new contract. I think, based on everything we're hearing, doesn't sound like the Bengals are panicking. And if the Bengals aren't panicking, it's because he's going to play. From his perspective, I don't know that I would do that because you're having to trust the Bengals quite a lot, like the Bengals organization, and they're an organization that's not exactly known for being, you know, generous with their funds. I suspect they will for him because he's the most important thing that's possibly ever happened to their franchise. But even with that being said, I think there's a lot of things sort of swirling around the Bengals, not to mention the fact that the Browns have always sort of given the Joe Burrow Bengals some issues. I'm going to say in week 1, Cleveland gets them for the combination of we don't exactly know what's going on with Joe Burrow. Cleveland kind of has their number, not exactly, but they've had a hard time with Cleveland. And the fact that the last 2 years, Cincinnati has started off slow. They tend to start the year like 2-2, 3-3, and then just go on a tear. And I think that assuming that trajectory holds, because sort of the same thing, Joe Burrow doesn't have a full offseason. He misses some practices. In training camp, doesn't play in the preseason. They come out a little bit out of sync to start the year. I think Cleveland gets them. Jacksonville goes to Indianapolis. Similar to the Carolina logic, I will apply that to Anthony Richardson as well. I have no reason to assume that this is going to go swimmingly out of the gate. Jonathan Taylor is not playing. It makes it tougher for them to be as ground and pound as they want. Their receiving options aren't awesome, and Jacksonville is a team that has been ascending the last couple years, and I think, and a lot of people think, they'll be better than they were last year. I think all those things combine for a Jags victory in week 1. Indianapolis, I think they could win by ground and pound, but that's about it. And that would mean somebody's got to step up big time. Tampa Bay at Minnesota. There's not going to be a lot of wins for Tampa Bay this year, but I think that this game could be closer. The Vikings defense is almost in a complete rebuild mode, especially in the secondary. But the Vikings offense should be humming. And I suspect that alone will be enough to overcome a Tampa Bay team that has a compromised O-line. Mike Evans doesn't seem to be super thrilled with the situation. He's also getting older. And Baker Mayfield, who knows? Every other year, every other game, hell, every other quarter, he's a different quarterback. So I'm going to take Minnesota, but I think this is a game that could be a little bit closer than people are expecting. Up next, Tennessee Titans go to New Orleans to take on the Saints in the Superdome. Gosh. You know what? I'm going to sort of go against conventional wisdom here. I'm going to say Tennessee goes in and beats them. Tennessee is going to play a style of offense that takes a little bit less time to get in sync. It's a physical offense. It's tough. Granted, their O-line's not awesome, but the Saints' defense, particularly in their front, is aging. And we'll see. I think that here's the other thing. Mike Vrabel has always got the Titans to punch above their weight class, except when everything falls apart, the O-line fell apart, quarterbacks were getting hurt, everything was different. I think Tennessee, with the DeAndre Hopkins addition, with Ryan Tannehill back, he might not be a game-changing quarterback, but he's more solid than people want to give him credit for. I think they have a chance to come into New Orleans a little more, just sort of battle-tested and ready than another team that's bringing in a new quarterback. I don't quite believe in Dennis Allen as a head coach like I do Vrabel. I have questions about the Saints defense, though I suspect they're good. I just think I have less question marks about Tennessee, even though I think that by the end of the year, New Orleans will be the better team. I think at the start of the year, Tennessee is more ready to jump in. Up next, the San Francisco 49ers go to Pittsburgh and take on the Steelers. This is another game that's tough to predict. As a 49ers fan, I am rooting for the 49ers, but I'm going to pick the Steelers for a simple reason. I don't believe they're better than the 49ers. I do believe, based on the last couple years, the Pittsburgh Steelers come out of the gates really strong, even against really good teams. They beat the Buffalo Bills, and they beat the Cincinnati Bengals in the last 2 week ones. The Steelers, Mike Tomlin said it best, when he's talking about essentially why he has his guys playing in the preseason. He says it's really tough to box without sparring. The Steelers keep themselves ready and in sync and ready to roll with the season. And the 49ers, their situation is just a little bit different. Nick Bosa got signed, which is great. So it's potentially like he's coming in fresh legs and wanting to prove that contract's worth it. He's going to probably be going up against a rookie tackle too. So that could go well. But TJ Watt is also going to be rushing on Colton McKivitz and not Trent Williams. So they both got an elite rusher going out there. I just have a feeling that just from what I've seen from Pittsburgh these last couple years, I just think they start fast and catch the 49ers. I hope I'm wrong, but San Francisco has been a little less even to start seasons, sort of like how the Bengals are. The Niners tend to like drop one or two and then go on a tear. So I think that's probably what happens here, but I will be pleasantly surprised if it's not. Up next, the Arizona Cardinals go to the Washington Commanders. What an exciting Week 1 game we have there. There are not going to be many wins this year for the Cardinals either, kind of like the Buccaneers. Though I do think this could be one of them in a Week 1 situation, but I'm not going to pick it. The Commanders are better at basically everything. Better D-line, better O-line, better weapons, like better secondary, better basically everything. This all comes down to Sam Howell. And in a battle of Sam Howell against Josh Dobbs, Clash of the Titans right there, I am going to say that Sam Howell will look better given his situation and with Ron Rivera. And I'll say that Washington gets it done. But in a Week 1 game where we have some questions about quarterbacks, Arizona could steal a win right here. We've seen bad teams. Like, I remember the year the Jags, the year they got Trevor Lawrence, the only game that they won that entire year was Week 1. And they stunned a team Week 1. And after that, nobody came really close to losing to them again. But that's possible to happen here for the Cardinals. Anything can happen in Week 1, but I'm just not going to pick it. The Houston Texans go to the Baltimore Ravens. Like I said, anything can happen in Week 1, but boy, I'd be shocked if Houston pulls it off in Baltimore. The Ravens, we'll have to see what this offense, this new look offense of theirs is. But even as they adjust to that, I just don't think the Texans are quite talented enough. I like where the Texans are heading. I think this offseason was the first time where they really decided to start laying down some foundational pieces. And I think that throughout the year, we'll see a team that fights really hard, that plays in a lot of close games. They're just not on Baltimore's level yet. And the same thing. CJ Stroud, first game. Baltimore's a tough test, man. Green Bay going to Chicago to take on the Bears. This is another interesting game because I think this is sort of a situation, sort of like how I described Tennessee and New Orleans. I think by the end of the year, one of these teams will be better, but it won't be the team that wins Week 1. I think Chicago is going to win in Week 1 because I think Green Bay has so much youth on offense, be it Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, obviously Jordan Love, that I suspect that by Week 5-ish, this team will round into shape a little bit more. But I think to start the year, the first time these guys are all really going in and getting live reps together, especially against a Bears team that, they're rebuilding, but they seem to have like momentum on their side, or everybody seems to be pretty positive about them. They'll be confident coming out of the preseason, even though they had some long plays that, scored. I think Chicago is going to be coming out sort of brimming with confidence. I don't know. I think I'm going to take Chicago. I won't be shocked if this is Green Bay. My theory really is just it's going to take the Green Bay offense a couple weeks to really grow into it with each other. Up next, the Las Vegas Raiders going to Denver to take on the Broncos in Sean Payton's home debut as Broncos head coach. I'm going to take the Broncos. I just don't I just don't. I'm not bought in on the Raiders this year. Um, Other than Max Crosby, their defense is not it. And the Broncos like made an effort on the O line. Max Crosby will still eat, but they got enough to keep the other guys out. The Raiders secondary is really not good. Marcus Peters might be he's an upgrade, but he's not what he used to be. The Raiders linebackers don't inspire much. Like I just don't think the Raiders defense is going to be able to hold up, even if people want to question the Broncos offense, and that is totally fair. I just think Sean Payton is going to be able to scheme it up enough, kind of like how Kyle Shanahan does with the 49ers. Some guys are just able to scheme up some easier things, and Sean Payton's one of those guys. Not to mention the Broncos defense. I think the Broncos defense is going to be really good, and that Raiders offense is not super awesome. Like Devontae Adams is tough, but I mean everybody's going to point to that play last year in overtime. But overall, Patrick Surtain is absolutely a worthy adversary for Devontae Adams. And everybody wants to point to Josh Jacobs. It's fine. I don't think Josh Jacobs is, even when he led the league in rushing, it didn't do much for the Raiders in terms of their win total. And Jimmy Garoppolo being back there, you might like the Raiders' weapons with Adams, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow. Jimmy Garoppolo is not the type of guy that's going to be able to take full advantage of those weapons because a lot of those guys are outside receivers, and Jimmy Garoppolo has never exactly thrived outside the numbers. Up next, the Philadelphia Eagles go to New England to take on the Patriots. I'm going to go with Philadelphia, but I think this is another one where this game could be closer than you're expecting because the Patriots are really well coached, really smart, especially on defense, where they're probably going to cause more issues for the Eagles than people are expecting. But overall, Philly's just more talented, man. The Patriots' offensive weapons, I think, is the biggest gap. And if those guys can't separate against the Philadelphia secondary, which I do think is not an impossible proposition, but if those guys aren't able to get off fast and that rotation of D-line guys has more time to get home, they'll get home. So I think Philly wins this one, even though I think this could be a lower scoring affair than people suspect. Up next, the Miami Dolphins go to LA to take on Justin Herbert and the Chargers. I'm going to take Miami here. The Dolphins, when they're healthy, are really difficult to beat. And in week one, they are healthy for the most part. Teron Armstead, I don't know what's going on exactly. He's always a big question mark. But the Chargers, for some reason, they can never play defense well, even though they have a defensive head coach and a lot of talent. They struggle. Mike McDaniel, he generates easy yards for that offense. And with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Raheem Mostert, they got a track team of skill guys that once the ball are in their hands and they roll, they're really rolling. And I just don't see the Chargers being able to do that much to them unless they can just get home on Tua constantly. But I also think a big difference is I think Mike McDaniel is several levels above Brandon Staley. And I want to try to be as nice as I can because I want everybody to be optimistic and have a great season and everything like that. I just don't see it with Brandon Staley, man. And I really like a lot of the players on the Chargers and everything like that. But, man, I just don't get it with that. Up next, the LA Rams go to Seattle to take on the Seahawks in that super loud stadium of theirs. The Rams are another team that you don't suspect are going to have a whole lot of wins this year. They have about 3 players that most people could name. One of those players is already not playing in Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford is aging, and without his weapon, or his best weapon, and an O-line that looks really porous, you expect that could be neutralized. So it's basically Aaron Donald and a bunch of guys nobody knows also on that defense. The only thing that makes me think the Rams could ever win this game is Sean McVay's done a pretty good job against the Seahawks in his time there. I just don't think they have the horses to do it. Unless you're telling me Aaron Donald in what will essentially be him versus 11 on the Seahawks offense, unless you're telling me he is going to just absolutely destroy a game, which he's capable of, but I think he would need a superhuman effort to go out and do that. The only other factor is Geno Smith did people figure him out? That's possible, but I think even if they did, the Rams aren't going to be able to be the team that exposes it. So I'll go Seattle. Sunday night football, the Dallas Cowboys go to New York to take on the New York Football Giants. I'm going to take Dallas. And I think this is a game that will not be as close as some people think it is. I think the Giants are a team that are likely like regression candidates, and I don't think their O-line's particularly great. Dallas can rush the passer really well. They also have two really good corners, and the Giants are not fielding a receiver that really makes you worry. Everybody would be like, oh, they paid Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. I don't think those are players the Cowboys really need to worry about breaking the game open. You'd worry more about Saquon Barkley. But the Cowboys are so good in the front that I don't think they'll have a problem with that. Their only real hope for the Giants is that their defense just is able to get home enough times. And it's possible they blitz all the time. Wink Martindale is notorious for having his defense be blitzing a lot more than basically every other team in the league. The only thing that would concern me there is the Giants are playing some cornerbacks that are either very young and very inexperienced or just not quite up to snuff to be man-to-man the whole time against CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup. This is the one where, week one, Dallas could be out of sync and the Giants could steal one, but on paper, I don't see the Giants having much of a chance there. And then Monday Night Football, the Buffalo Bills also go to New York to take on the Jets in Aaron Rodgers' debut in Gang Green. Ooh. I'm going to take the Bills, but it is not with a lot of confidence. My main reason is this. The Bills are still good. The Bills had a sort of a rough offseason in terms of people like being on them about like, oh, they choked here, they did this. People also don't talk enough about how crazy of a year Buffalo had in terms of like injuries to their defense and obviously just some wild situations like the whole DeMar Hamlin thing, yada, yada, yada. We all saw it last season. But to start the year, that all doesn't really matter. And we've seen before Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, even back when Peyton Manning went to Denver, when Matthew Stafford went to the Rams, when Russell Wilson went to the Broncos. Oftentimes, these transitions with good quarterbacks who know what they want and need it a particular way, oftentimes that does not come out and come together right away. And I think against a team like Buffalo, they may be able to just sort of have the Jets out of sync enough to beat them. When Peyton Manning came to Denver, they started off like 3-3 and then went on a tear to 13-3. Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, that team didn't even win the division, though they did win the Super Bowl. But it took them till about like halfway through the year, a little beyond that, to really find their stride. Matthew Stafford, week one looked really great. And then the Rams went on a little bit of a roller coaster. And then they sort of got on a rhythm and lucked their way to a Super Bowl. And then, obviously, Russell Wilson in Denver, it never clicked. And that's what we got to watch this year. Will it click? But I suspect it could take a little bit longer than people are hoping for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets to really reach their full potential. And sort of how Detroit might be a little out of their depth with Kansas City. I think that by the end of the year, this is a game that is really important, really interesting, and really well matched. But at the start of the year, I think the time spent together and the experience of the Bills will win the day. So those are all my picks for week one. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you don't. I'd love to see all of your picks. And overall, I mean, how great is it that football's back, guys? This is awesome. And I hope everybody has a great first weekend. Try not to fight any fans from opposing teams. We've seen that more and more and more. But overall, let's all have a great week one. Let's all have a great season. I'll recap all these picks at the start of next week, and then obviously do some week 2 picks next week. And yeah, this is going to be a great time. Everybody have a great year. Thanks so much for tuning in. Once again, hit like, hit subscribe, share the video, and yeah,